Native commemoration, important events of the past, in lieu of conversation. Words will always retain their power. Words are for the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't it? People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
Corruption? Corruption is government intrusion into market efficiencies in the form of regulation. We have laws against it precisely so we can get away with it. Corruption? Corruption? Corruption is government intrusion into market efficiencies in the form of regulation. We have laws against it precisely so we can get away with it. Corruption?
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The outcomes were monumental. Sustained pressure from protests, lawsuits, and community organizing led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned discrimination in public places and employment, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed discriminatory voting practices. However, these victories came only after years of relentless effort, showing how ordinary people, armed with facts and moral conviction, can challenge and reform entrenched systems, wielding the sledgehammer of justice against institutional barriers. This overview sets the stage for our parallels with the MMTLP controversy, the U.S. civil rights movement focusing on the pivotal years from the 1950s to the 1960s. This was a nonviolent, grassroots struggle for social justice, primarily aimed at ending legalized racial segregation, discrimination, and disenfranchisement for Black Americans. It built on centuries of resistance against slavery and Jim Crow laws, transforming into a nationwide mass movement that swept the country, seeking constitutional equality at every level. Key historical context. The movement was led by iconic figures such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and organizations like the NAACP and SCLC. It featured tactics like constitutional sit-ins, boycotts, freedom rides, and marches. Landmark events included the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision declaring segregated schools unconstitutional, the 1955 to 1956 Montgomery bus boycott, sparked by Parks' arrest, the 1963 March on Washington, where King delivered his I Have a Dream speech, and the 1965 Bloody Sunday March in Selma that highlighted voting rights abuse. Government involvement was often complicit or obstructive, which is what MMTLP and all of retail is experiencing now. Government corruption. Local and state governments enforced Jim Crow laws through violence and intimidation, while federal agencies like the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover surveilled activists and downplayed atrocities such as lynchings and police brutality. Despite overwhelming evidence, photos, testimonies, and statistics on voter suppression and inequality, officials frequently refused to act, hiding behind excuses like states' rights or procedural delays. Activists countered this by gathering irrefutable data and appealing directly to the Constitution, particularly the 14th Amendment's guarantees of equal protection and due process. The outcomes were monumental. Sustained pressure from protests, lawsuits, and community organizing led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned discrimination in public places and employment, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed discriminatory voting practices. However, these victories came only after years of relentless effort, showing how ordinary people, armed with facts and moral conviction, can challenge and reform entrenched systems. This overview sets the stage for our parallels with the MMTLP controversy. Both highlight institutional resistance and the power of evidence-based advocacy.
Corruption? Corruption is government intrusion into market efficiencies in the form of regulation. We have laws against it precisely so we can get away with it. Corruption.
The outcomes were monumental. Sustained pressure from protests, lawsuits, and community organizing led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned discrimination in public places and employment, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed discriminatory voting practices. However, these victories came only after years of relentless effort, showing how ordinary people, armed with facts and moral conviction, can challenge and reform entrenched systems, wielding the sledgehammer of justice against institutional barriers. This overview sets the stage for our parallels with the MMTLP controversy. MMTLP controversy, zeroing in on the government's corrupt role and MMTLP investor response. This saga began with FINRA's unprecedented U3 trading halt on December 9, 2022, for Metamaterials Series A preferred shares, MMTLP, tied to a spin-off to Next Bridge Hydrocarbons, leaving around 65,000 investors with frozen assets potentially worth billions. Starting with government's role. Entities like FINRA, a self-regulatory organization overseen by the SEC, and the SEC purpose pump and dump of MMTLP complicity in a cover-up to protect FINRA members, short sellers, and institutional players. FINRA imposed the rare halt, citing an extraordinary event. It was premeditated, with emails and FOIAs showing prior knowledge of issues like naked short selling without warnings to investors. State-level involvement includes Missouri's Secretary of State demanding answers from FINRA in September 2025, labeling it a meme stock shutdown that harmed retail investors. Congressional inquiries, such as those led by Representative Ralph Norman in 2023 and supported by over 100 lawmakers, have yielded evasive responses from FINRA and SEC, with no subpoenas or hearings despite evidence of anomalies. All of Congress and the Senate is full blast on protecting the corruption done by SEC and FINRA. Under the current administration, a hands-off approach to FINRA and SEC persists, with whistleblower reports alleging undisclosed international banking operations and conflicts of interest, further eroding trust. The government passes over retail to ensure the market mechanics of fraud continues. Now, turning to MMTLP response. Shareholders have mobilized aggressively, compiling evidence like share records and trading data, revealing millions of illegal counterfeit shares, FOIA requests exposing regulatory communications, and subpoenas targeting firms such as Anson Funds, Citadel, and Virtu. Over 56,000 complaints have flooded regulators, with more than 200,000 complaints warehoused without action. Advocacy includes change.org petitions calling for reform, open letters to Congress with signatures from 74 representatives, and demands for hearings on T+2 settlement enforcement. Lawsuits persist, such as a June 2025 Vermont case dismissing claims against some defendants but highlighting ongoing disputes, and pro-SE motions for sanctions amid community infighting. On platforms like X, investors tag officials like President Trump, VP Vance, and Doge leaders, pushing for constitutional redress through nonviolent sit-ins and invoking the Fifth Amendment for property seizures without due process. This focused overview underscores the tension between institutional inaction and determined advocacy. The absolute need for retail and MMTLP to do a constitutional rights redress.
Wanting people to listen, you can't just tap them on the shoulder anymore. You have to hit them with a sledgehammer, and then you'll notice you've got their strict attention.
Next, government complicity and cover-up. Local police and federal agencies like the FBI ignored or concealed evidence of brutality, while states resisted oversight. For MMTLP, FINRA and the SEC colluding to halt trading, shielding hedge funds with prior knowledge evident in emails, yet providing no transparency or warning. Yet again, the FBI and Department of Justice have full knowledge, have ignored and concealed the evidence of the fraud. Likewise, all of Congress and the U.S. Senate have also full knowledge of the massive fraud occurring daily, and not just in MMTLP for well over 5 years now, also ignore the pleas of the people and conceal the crime by total inaction. Then, refusal to act. The federal government was slow to enforce civil rights despite petitions and clear evidence, such as delays in desegregation efforts. In MMTLP, there's been no action on congressional letters, Senate letters, or retail demands for hearings, with over 1,000 days of inaction despite massive shareholder evidence on the data and FOIAs proving corruption and legal anomalies and full-out crime. Reliance on facts, data, and the Constitution. Civil rights activists used photos, testimonies, and statistics on inequality, suing under the 14th Amendment for equal protection. MMTLP investors gather FOIA and trading records showing fraud, invoking the Fifth Amendment for property takings without due process. Finally, grassroots resistance, marches, boycotts, and legal challenges built unstoppable momentum in the civil rights era, delivering the sledgehammer of justice to systemic wrongs. For MMTLP, social media campaigns, petitions, and calls for nonviolent sit-ins demand hearings, echoing successful historical tactics to expose systemic flaws. FS. These parallels aren't just historical. They highlight how persistence with evidence can force reform, even against overwhelming odds. In both cases, the fight extends to broader implications, like eroding trust in institutions. Government only will respect standing armies and direction action. This means retail and MMTLP must amass their army in a constitutional rights redress and demand their constitutional rights. This is the only way to take direct control of the situation and put the government's gaslighting and avoidance tactics away from them.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
Corruption? Corruption is government intrusion into market efficiencies in the form of regulation. We have laws against it precisely so we can get away with it. Corruption.
Finally, we arrive at lessons and call to action. Here, we'll synthesize the shared lessons from these parallels and outline actionable steps forward. Both the civil rights movement and the MMTLP fraud teach us that direct in-person action and persistence, armed with undeniable evidence, can expose and dismantle systemic governmental flaws. The civil rights era succeeded through years of sustained advocacy, marches, boycotts, and lawsuits that pressured institutions into reform, proving that ordinary citizens can bend the arc of justice. Similarly, MMTLP's fight, if amplified, could lead to U.S. financial system-wide reforms like banning naked short selling and enforcing true transparency, rebuilding trust in our financial systems. Current status. As of November 2025, MMTLP remains unresolved after over 1,000 days, with recent developments including NextBridge Hydrocarbons 10K filing after disputes with the SEC, Missouri's ongoing scrutiny of FINRA, and revelations like lost CC texts from Chair Gary Gensler amid probes. Community efforts continue with evidence gathering only tactics, pleading and begging government with no yielding to the cover-up, the tactics of getting FOIAs, passive action petitions, and social media calls for involvement from the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and potential removal of FINRA's immunity, alongside discussions of data purges and resolution goals. The broader implications? Retail continues to lose. The battle passive tactics continue to fail. There is no hope in begging and pleading to the government. They're doing the crime and cover up on purpose, and retail is failing or blindly denying the truth at this point, eroding faith in markets.
Wanting people to listen, you can't just tap them on the shoulder anymore. You have to hit them with a sledgehammer, and then you'll notice you've got their strict attention.
Much like the post-civil rights reforms that restored civil liberties. Recommendations. To drive change, we must 1. Do a constitutional rights redress MMTLP, focusing on audited share counts and T+2 settlement enforcement immediately and for allies that join their share counts. 2. Advocate public for Trump administration to immediately fire SEC and FINRA employees for criminal negligence due to 1,000 days refusal to T2 MMTLP, causing veteran suicides, broken families, divorces, countless lost homes due to foreclosure, lost family farms, total financial destruction caused by SEC and FINRA running a pump and dump on retail. 3. Pursue constitutional protections in financial regulations, such as stronger safeguards against property takings under the Fifth Amendment through nonviolent actions like constitutional sit-ins. Final thought. Just as the civil rights movement transformed America by holding power accountable, resolving MMTLP could pave the way for fair markets and greater economic justice. It's time to act. Our facts, our rights, our future.
I don't have
to tell you things are bad? Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression because nobody anywhere seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so all we say is please, and all we say is please, and all we say is please. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Thank you for your attention.